What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 for episode 125? For those keeping score at home, we're a day early. We're normally on at Wednesday, but I hope everyone was able to adjust, jump on, hang out with us on a Tuesday. Before we get into all the fun stuff, Dave, you're still here. You're still just hanging around for some reason.
My desk made a weird noise. I'm a little perturbed right now.
I do have to say one thing about Restream, and we need to talk to this. Anyone listening, we use Restream over here. Can we make the transitions in the videos a little bit smoother? Like when we're going like from
Maybe
like
it's your fault.
like no, I've looked.
Could be your fault.
No, I've looked at all the settings to see if like we can like smooth out into like certain things, and I haven't found anything. If I'm doing something wrong, if someone from Restream wants to like get in touch and just be like, "Hey, idiot, this is how you do it," I'm fine with that.
You could just OBS it into Restream anyway, so
that's fine. But I need to just edit my videos so they fade out, so I'll do it naturally. I don't know, but that's one of my only complaints. Restream has been kind of dope. I'll take it over StreamYard any day right now, even though we didn't use StreamYard.
I was gonna say we haven't used StreamYard, so
you know what though? We're using Restream, damn it. So I gotta promote them. I'll be kind to them. David, be quiet. Anyway, if you're watching on X, hello, repost over there and retweet, whatever you want to call it, share the show. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the show. We're on a quest for 4K. We stayed static over on X for our quest for 4,000 followers. 3602 over there. And I consider that a win because no one ran away. Obviously, they didn't hate us that bad. That's good. And over on YouTube, we gained uno follower, which is good. Any follower we gain, we're happy. Subscriber there. So up to 66 on our quest for 100 there. As we do every week, I'm going to talk about last week's show. And we're pumped because last week we talked to your buddy, a pro featherweight boxer, Jeffrey the Fly U. And he was a big upcoming fight on the 18th of May last week against Harley McPherson, coming from all the way over across the pond in Britain. And from what Jeff said, pretty big deal over in Britain. He had, packed houses. Dave, how long did it take the Fly to take him out?
36 seconds.
36
Actually,
seconds.
like 36 seconds. Yeah.
And so we're pumped. That is his fifth KO, right? All 5 wins have come by KO.
Yeah.
So he's 5-1 now, and we're excited. So congrats to Jeff. All the training for 36 seconds. But you know what, though? That just shows how talented he is, how good of a camp he had, all the great coaching. So congrats to him and his coaches. And to you too, Dave. You're part of the gym. You train with him. So, you've done something. You've let him punch you in the face a few times. So that's always a good thing. So I want to jump right in to this week's show, Dave. I'm excited to have this individual on. He's someone that, man, how long have we known each other for? Dave, when was I in 6th grade?
I don't know. I wasn't alive.
2001, 2000, probably some from the millennium, which is insane. Known this individual for about 24 years. I can math. Jumping in, he is Steven Mendez. He is a pastor, a pilot, a pro rugby player, father of 6, and one of the co-hosts of the current podcast on Spotify.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to call you Steven. I'm calling you Mendez. Mendez, what's going on?
That's what you called me my whole life, man. Hey, it's great to be on here, man. I'm glad that we reconnected. I'm glad I get to do this with you and for you. So just happy to be here.
And what last time I knew you, it was just, Annapolis graduate pilot Mendez. And I remember, still at the time, every once in a while, you would be like, hey, I flew this today. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of hate you for that. And all the things that you would do, doing dope stuff in Annapolis. But I want to kind of jump in and just talk to you about like your life, because you've taken a lot of progressions and you've done a lot of things. So we met kind of 6th grade back over in Manchester Middle School, Mr. Boyle's class. We definitely connected and, became like good friends over there and stuff like that. And then I kind of went away because my parents hate me.
You left me.
Yeah,
you left me.
Left you. I blame mom and dad, brought me to Lakehurst. And then, we reconnected in high school. Weren't best of friends. We're still friends, like, right? Like, not like we were fine. We were chill and everything.
No, man.
So, we have a good time. You were in ROTC, and then you go off to Annapolis, and from there, your life took off. So, kind of talk about military academy, what that was like, and things like that.
Sure.
Give us the rundown, brother.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to apologize and take my piece of the pie. We probably weren't such great friends in high school because I thought it was a good idea to date your ex-girlfriend after you left middle school. So I'll take that. That was poor form on my part.
And you know what though? Me and Melissa are still really good friends, and
that's
she's
good.
Up in Texas. She has 2 kids. She's awesome. So That's seventh grade.
Yeah. Seventh grade Steve was a real jerk. I don't love that guy.
I mean, you definitely had more Riz than I did. If we were just at the time, I guess it would be called now.
You're too old. Don't use that term.
Listen, we gotta connect to the young audience here, Dave.
Not you.
I mean, I gotta they can't see the gray hairs too closely through here.
But yeah, man. So graduated high school, went off to Annapolis. We graduated in 2007, class of 11 at Annapolis. Went in wanting to be a ground pounder, maybe EOD, maybe Marine ground, don't know. But they were dumb enough to let me fly an airplane one summer. And once they got me in one, I was like, man, that's it. So put all my effort into that, graduated 2011, went off to flight school, made it through in about 2 years. Yeah.
I want to talk about a funny story though, because while you were at flight school, at one summer, I forget what bar we were at, and I don't even know if you were drinking or not, but you just kind of came out, we saw each other, and for whatever reason, I stayed 5'8", and you became 6 foot forever, and it was like, what the hell? And then, but though, like, you really feel that you started lifting a lot, and I was like, dude, you're massive, and you're like, yeah, I'm getting too big. They told me I got to slim out. I won't be able to fit in the cockpit, which I found hilarious that there's like, military, you're supposed to be killing machines. You're supposed to be strong, fit, and big, and you're part, and they're like, bro, calm down. I found that to be hilarious.
even for the military, 6'3", 245 is really pushing the limits of of what they want. But I like red meat and I like the gym. So here we are.
There you go.
Yeah, man.
For a little while you had Fit Dungeon going on and things like that, but you could probably talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, that ties into one of the coolest things in my life, a really bad divorce. So we'll get there.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll talk about that.
Oh boy.
But no, man, was by the grace of God blessed enough to get my first choice, fly 60 Sierras out of Norfolk, picked up the Spec Ops mission, was on the road a lot with the boys in Team 2, 4, 10, SRTs, a little bit of MARSOC, and some NATO Special Forces. Did 3 deployments, 2 involved NATO. 1 was dedicated Greenside Marines over in the Middle East. And now I'm a lowly flight instructor on the reserves down here in Florida. I fly most Thursdays and Fridays, but full-time ministry is my call.
Dude, but thank God you are. I'm not going to lie. With all the things popping off in the world, and I can imagine you being former military and seeing things going on, you probably want to go be there with your brothers, help out.
100%.
Skills. Yeah. But from a friend's perspective, with all the adversity, and we're not in war in Ukraine, and we're not in war in Israel, like we're doing things there, like, and you would have been somebody who was flying in these special missions, would have been there doing the things that we're not doing. And so for that, I'm happy that you're not involved anymore.
Yeah, there's a little bit of survivor's guilt with some of that stuff, and I've told my wife that if it really does pop off, I'm probably going to be the first one to raise my hand to go back. It's a very selfish statement, because I got a lot for me back here, but just like the passion is like, man, I don't know if I could not.
You've had this calling since I've known you though. And it's like, and it's knowing your mom and dad, because your mom and dad are like, not like, your dad's kind of like a chill dude, like whatever. Your mom's similar, your sister's more that way. And you've always been chill, but you've always had that military calling. Like since I've known you, that's kind of you and another one of our buddies, Mike Claus, like, both you always knew you were going to go military, like, and that was always something that was your path, and you both went to Annapolis together, obviously.
It was the thing that made me a dork in high school that really like greased the skids for the rest of my life. I was a Rotzi kid and was gung-ho in high school, but
you didn't come out and run with us. You were a runner for a little. You didn't come out and do XC and cross and running with us.
Yeah, I still don't. I don't run much. I am gifted to have a very high VO2 max, and that's good enough for me to pass my fitness test. But I don't run at all, man. I hate running.
I don't blame you. Most good runners hate running too.
Yeah, I hate running. So it is what it is. But yeah, man, so that got me kind of where I'm at as far as the military goes. I'm a lieutenant commander now. I'll screen for command and commander in about 3 years. Most likely I'll pick up command. Got my master's and my command leadership squared away. So awesome. I'll get command of a reserve unit probably 3-ish, 4-ish years and keep riding into the sunset, man.
That's fantastic. So you're still, so as a reserve, are you considered basically now, like, you're technically not active, but you're the first lines if, our actives go off and they need more people? Are you the first ones they basically like, hey, we get some more people out there before we start pulling civilians, you guys, type of deal?
Yes, and I'm in a really weird corner of the reserves, because most reservists are 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. I work 10 days a month. just the section of the reserves I'm in is kind of pay as you play. So as much as I want to play is as much as they'll pay me. So I fly Thursdays and Fridays almost every week, a weekend every now and then, and there's no shortage of drills and flight hours for me to get. So I work a lot on the military side.
Yeah, I froze for a second. Dave, if I freeze, you take over because
I
I
didn't
know
even see you froze.
Yeah, I froze. Like
no,
I did freeze, and I know I froze. I saw you two stop moving, so I was like, I'm just gonna not say anything because I don't want to come back and do the whole entire like really fast speaking.
Yeah.
So Dave, if you notice I freeze, take over. But
hopefully I do.
Yeah, hopefully, please do. Please be a good host. But so that gets us through your military phase, and obviously you're still military. You're a reservist. You never once military, always military. You never actually stop. So now you get done with the military, and you're in civilian life. You're in a reservist.
Yeah.
What do you take in civilian life?
So it actually, I did it a little bit of reverse order, man. I got to tell a whole lot of stories with a whole lot of moving parts to get there. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna punch into it. So 2013, I get my wings. I move to Norfolk. I go to a bar. Is this a family-oriented show? Do I have to watch what I say?
Nope.
Okay, cool. So this is BC Steve, is before Christ Steve. So there's a lot of things that he did. As long as the people
in the ministry are not going to sit there and look differently upon you. Okay.
No. My BC story is very much out there. So yeah, it's part of my testimony. But I moved to Norfolk. I'm 24 years old. I go first night, first bar, and I see a girl. And my buddy taps me, and he's like, "Hey, man, short, big fake boobs and tattoos. That's your type." So I marry her. Like that's the story. Typical military cat. 24 years old, first night, first bar, beautiful girl. I marry her. Yep. So we get married real quick. I propose in 5 months. We get married in less than a year. We have 2 kids. We go through deployments. That marriage fell apart for a litany of reasons. I was dealing with a lot of stuff from my deployments that made me non-present. Me being non-present pushed her to do things that she probably wouldn't have done otherwise. It just didn't work out.
And I feel like that's like a very much, typical military deployment consistent story where, I feel like one of the things that we fail with our military veterans and people in active is we don't provide you guys with enough assistance on the mental side. And it's tough though, right? Because like as you're active, they still want you to be a killing machine. So they don't want you to sit there and be in your feelings because they want you to take orders, do what you need to do, and do it. Don't look at these other people as humans, right? Do what you got to do. But in the same token, you're coming back different. Like I've known veterans, I've known people, some of them broken, some of them not, but still very different either way. You don't come back the same person that you left. And I think that's a shortcoming and that hurtful. And I think another thing that they need to do is provide spouses better help that are there because they have to deal with so much in the home front. And like you said, like circumstances probably made you both different people in, than what you would have been if it was a typical, you're at home 9 to 5, things like that.
Yep. And just like everything I'm saying is BC Steve, this is also BC, my ex-wife, because now my ex-wife sits with me and my current wife at church every Sunday. Me and my wife actually baptized my ex-wife. And we co-parent on a whole other level. So everything I'm saying applies to a different person than she is now. But a lot of things happened and we just ended up not making the run. And I had a lot of resentment and anger. And at the same time, I blew out my right knee real bad in a rugby match and moved across the country for her career as we were going through this kind of tough spot. So what happened is I find myself laid up in bed in a town with no friends and no support. Of course, they give you a handful of painkillers and my wife just left me and I can't fly and I can't play rugby and all I have is my thoughts in a dark room. And that takes you to a pretty dark place pretty quick.
And you don't have to be military. Go through a military deployment to be very dark if you're given pills in a dark room.
Yeah, 100%.
That's just a human condition thing.
Yeah, but you throw all
everything else.
All the toppings.
That doesn't help.
So I started coaching a rugby team down here while I was healing because I couldn't play. And there was a guy on that team named Doug. He kept inviting me to church. And I was like, bump that, dude. God hates me. Like, look at my life. I was raised like a typical Italian Puerto Rican kid from New Jersey. All I knew was the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church didn't make me feel so loved. Felt very dutiful. And no offense to any Catholics out there. I'm sure there's a ton of Catholic churches that do it really well. Just wasn't my experience. it was rote memorization and duty instead of devotion. So yeah, I stiff armed him for a long time. And simultaneously, when I could start going back to the gym, there was this really cute girl there. Noticed her the first day I went, and it took me, I've been out of the game for 7 years at this point.
Yep.
What's the word? Riz? Zero Riz. None
I
Riz.
give you so much credit because I've said, my wife is lovely. Julie's amazing.
Yeah.
If she ever got smart and divorced me, I would never try again because I wouldn't know how, and I'd also have to card every single woman I ever met. Because
yeah. Well, let me tell you how sick my game was. This gorgeous girl is working out in the gym. Unbeknownst to me, she's going through her own divorce and her own trials. So men are public enemy number one. So I'm in the negatives before I even step to the plate.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I walk up and she's wearing a shirt. You'll appreciate this. That says Gym Tan Laundry.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that's my name. Like, I'm in.
Yeah, sure.
I walk up to her, tell her like, hey, take your earbud out. And I'm like, oh, Gym Tan Laundry. I'm from New Jersey. And she takes her earbud and she goes, cool.
Yeah.
I
knew the answer.
So guys,
crushed.
not the pickup line. Not the pickup line. If you're from Jersey, keep it to yourself. Number one.
Yeah. So a month later, I licked my wounds enough where I was like, hey, bro, try again.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's wearing a shirt that says Pura Vida. And it's a tattoo I have. I've been to Costa Rica a bunch. So the T-shirt line worked so good the first time. I was like, let's do it again. I walked up and I was like, hey, I like your shirt. And she looks at me and goes, oh, you're the T-shirt guy. And puts her earbud back in. I'm so crushed. Like, I'm missing it. I'm just striking out. And a month later, I'm in there working out, and we had a mutual friend in the gym, a buddy. It was a gym buddy of mine, the guy that you always like say, hey, what's going on? Because you work out at the same time. And he knew her pretty well.
And if you need a spot or something, like he's the guy that you look at and be like, hey, bro, that's the guy that you go. You don't really know each other, but you understand you're there every day together. See each other. You're like, that guy won't let me die. Come spot me. Like
I knew his name was Zach, and he had a tattoo. That's about it. Like that's the extent of our friendship.
Yeah.
One of the best friends I ever had. So it's kind of me on a bench, him on a bench, and this girl on a bench. And he stops in the middle of the workout. He couldn't have, dude, if he was trying, he couldn't have done better. He was like, Steve, Melanie, you're both going through a divorce. And you both have kids. And you both work out. And you both play rugby. Y'all should talk. And I was like, dude, you couldn't have done this better if I paid you.
Yeah, really.
That was like, what was it? The movie, what was it with Will Smith? Where he like sets James up. Hitch.
Hitch. Yeah. Dude, he hitched me. So that was the first time I had a normal conversation with my now wife. And well, it actually gets way freaking worse. So I asked if I could walk her to her car. I walk her down to her car and I close the door. And then I'm like, bro, you didn't give her your number. You didn't get her number, her Instagram, like nothing. You have no way to contact this girl.
You're just going to make eye contact next time at the gym and hope that she smiles. Like,
well, no, I ran to the car and I got a scrap of paper from a receipt and I wrote my phone number on it. I ran back across the street. I was real nervous. She rolled down her window and I meant to hand it to her, but I balled it up and I threw it at her face. And she looked at me real bewildered. And I said, you can call me or don't. That's fine. And I walked away.
Do you give dating advice now?
Well, she told me that it was really endearing that the giant gorilla man like couldn't handle himself.
Yeah.
She's like, it was really cute that like you didn't know how to talk to girls and you were bumbling over your words. She's like, it was adorable.
Which is hilarious because that's nothing like the Steve Mendez I knew growing up. Like you were always like smooth, really confident. Like you were always that guy in high school. Like, and you didn't care that like, you weren't the athlete. Like you rode horses, you did karate, you were military, and you didn't care. Like you were just yourself and that's how you were. So it is funny just hearing that switch up from you,
dude.
Like, not being this. Obviously, you went through a lot to get to that point.
Yeah, right? My military stuff kind of shaved down some of my rough edges, and then my divorce took the wind out of my sails, and I was really just a shell of a person at that point. I've gotten a lot of that back, luckily, but I was just going through the motions, trying to make it. And me and my wife probably saved my life more than I could ever say. So, yeah.
So wait, you're a bigot like Harrison Butker when you're talking about, wives and husbands being really happy to be around each other?
I see nothing wrong with what he said.
Absolutely. Yes, you're a real human.
Sorry, man.
He said, well, here's the thing. just a quick aside.
Yeah.
A Catholic Jesuit church. It was
Speaking Catholic Jesuit values.
Yeah. Like even if you had something wrong with what he said, he's not speaking to you.
Yeah.
Why do you care?
If he's at like a pride march or a women's rally where a bunch of pussies at the Washington Monument saying that, maybe that's the wrong setting, right? He's still not doing anything wrong, but maybe he read the room. He read the room there. It was an amazing speech.
He got an 18-second standing ovation. Like, yeah.
It's because they were forced to.
And I love, people who clearly didn't listen to or read the manuscript, and they're just going off of assumption. They're like, he said every woman should. He didn't say every woman should.
No.
He said some of you may have illustrious careers. Let me tell you my lived experience with my wife. So don't feel bad if your heart is set on your career, but what God has for you is to be a stay-at-home wife and a mother, because that's just as rewarding. That's what I took from it.
They didn't watch him tear up as he was talking about his relationship with his wife, and also just basically saying that, I'd imagine a good portion of you here look forward to motherhood as much as anything else, as a job and as being a stay-at-home, and that's okay. And that's okay. And it is okay. We need to make that okay again. Sorry.
Family values, bro.
With, you
tell me about it.
Us.
Tell me about it. Yeah. So as I'm courting this new girl, my buddy Doug on the rugby team stops asking me to come to church. And he tells me there's this event. It's called a night of worship. It's like a Christian concert that the church puts on. And he was like, bro, it's literally 2 minutes from your house. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. I'll show up at your front door. Meanwhile, this guy's like, 5'6". And he's like, I will show up at your door. And for whatever reason, I believe him. I'm like, all right, dude. And I go. And that night, like, the Holy Spirit breaks me wide open, man. I've only ever been to Catholic church. I'd never experienced anything charismatic or non-denominational or anything like that. And at some point I end up just like flat on my face crying, and all of the things that had broken me over the last 2 years were just spilling out on the floor, and I just felt so much lighter and easier. And I got home that night, and I had a real moment where I looked in the mirror and I was like, man, if that's what God is, because that's not the God that I assumed my whole life, but if that's what God is, I think I got to give him everything, because he just saved my life. And that was kind of where I started. What
you went through terrifies people. And I've experienced this in in my family. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it was an individual who had a similar situation. He found God. And and I think that scares people when they see a different side of a person, and where you're still yourself, right?
Yes.
But you're now sitting there and you're talking more about scripture. You're encouraging people more to believe in faith, believe in Jesus Christ. And for me, as someone, I am not overly religious. I don't go to church a ton, but I still believe in Jesus Christ. I still believe in God. I have my own relationship with Jesus and God. And I understand, maybe it's because of I still stay around a lot of conservative media, and a lot of people in conservative media are religious. They do preach a lot. So like for me, I understand what's seeing, and the difference between someone who found faith, Jesus and God, and someone who is in a cult, right?
Yes.
And people, I think, really conflate the two. With somebody who now has found Jesus, is incredibly faithful, isn't afraid to let you know that you found Jesus. And I think sometimes that gets mixed up. I think sometimes you, as a person that maybe understands that, needs to like check some of those people, because it's like, all right, dude, a little bit too preachy, tone it down a little. Like, we get it. But like, and then I think if someone like you is like, okay, I get that. Sorry. I'll back up a little. Like, but it's like, I feel like what you went through is beautiful. And I love that you went through that. And the picture that we're using today is from you at your baptism, I'd imagine, right?
That is me baptizing a lot of other people.
Oh, that's awesome. You at the lake. Like, that's sick. And, so it's like, and, so talk about the reaction of after you find God, and obviously you're probably, much more talking about faith and everything. What was you finding faith and kind of telling your close friends and family about it?
So one of the hardest parts about my walk is that I found Jesus in the same city I was a heathen in, the same city I was drinking 4 nights a week, the same city I was chasing everything with a pulse. Now I'm not. And that leads a lot of people to think it's a disingenuous change.
Yes.
Especially when it's a initial, when someone is the same way for years and years, all you could do is go, well, that's who they are.
That's your
base. But that first 6 months or so, there was so much skepticism, so much. That's the dude that was, ripping 18 shots and taking home the blonde, getting in bar fights. my transition between active duty and reserve to pad for about 6 months there when I was going through the divorce, and she was owed money. Like, it is what it is. I owed her money. I was doing a lot of security and bouncing gigs. And for whatever reason, girls at concerts think the bouncer have access to the talent. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't exploit that, right?
Absolutely.
I was just on a different walk. So number one, the skepticism was tough, and I had to trim a lot of my circle. And what I realized is I had multiple circles of friendship. I had big circles, which didn't change. And if all you do is surround yourself with people that look, feel, act, and talk like you do, you're an idiot and you live in an echo chamber. So I wanted to keep a lot of people that were nothing like me in my big circle. But I also realized that you're the average of the 5 people closest to you. So the 5 people that I let in really had to, I seek variance in the non-negotiable, or variance in the negotiables and consistency in the non-negotiables. So my 5 closest people had to shift out to people that were on a similar walk, similar family values, just a similar life. And some people got hurt over that, and some people understood, and they're still my friends in the grand circle, but they know why they're not, in that tight 5.
The MySpace friends list. You did the whole MySpace thing. Like you got your MySpace.
I changed my top 8.
Yeah. What's your background song right now? No, I'm kidding.
It's Hello Goodbye Call and Return, because that's what it was on my last MySpace page, I'm pretty sure.
That's awesome.
But yeah, man, it was a lot. And then this is the crazy part, is my entire family's Catholic. They were raised Catholic. My sister, through a series of unfortunate events in her early 20s, was an atheist, because the Catholic Church hurt her deep. Like, hey, get out of our church, you don't belong here type thing, which is the most hypocritical thing in the world. Why would you want anything but sinners in your church? But that's another conversation for another time. And my parents were both Catholic. Well, through my new walk, my parents started coming to church with me when they would visit. And my mom and my dad got saved at my church. I got to baptize my mom and my dad.
That's incredible.
And then my sister, who I love her to death. She's one of my best friends, still is. For her birthday, I sent her a runner's devotional, because she likes to run. And she called me and she said, I love you. You're my best friend. You ever send me anything like that, I'll stop talking to you forever. Like, that's how hurt she was. Until my grandma died. When my grandma was on her deathbed, my sister called me. She lives in Washington State, so it was like 11 o'clock at night here, because it was only 9 o'clock at night there. And for the first time, she had this feeling of, there's got to be something more, because I can't believe my favorite person in the world is just going to rot in a hole. I have to believe that she's going somewhere. I have to believe there's something after this. And I got to lead my sister to Jesus on the phone at 11 o'clock at night. And then after my grandma's funeral, I baptized my sister. Awesome. So my walk has leaked into my entire family. It's radically changed my entire family. I see my niece and my nephew chasing after Jesus now, because their mom is chasing after him. I see my parents. They moved down here 4 months ago. They live down here with me.
That's sweet. That's awesome.
It took having a 6th grandkid. Yeah, I'm just outside of Pensacola in a little town called Gulf Breeze. But it took having a 6th grandkid. And my retired parents were like, what are we doing? Let's get down to the grandkids. Like, why are we up here?
Jersey and go to paradise and Florida and freedom and get out of communism.
So they're down here, which is free babysitters for 6 kids. Love that.
It's pretty good.
Date nights are a thing again. Vacations are a thing again. But that's kind of how I got to where I'm at, man. And the pastor gig, unless you have questions, man, I could step into how I ended up being a pastor, which is a wild story too.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this is all about you. So step in, because like obviously becoming a member of the church is, big,
one
right?
thing.
And that's that, and you're a part of Momentum Church, right? That is the ministry that you're a part of. And that's big in itself, right? Because if you're a member, and a lot of churches want you to be active. So if you're an active member, that's enough. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But you have always been charismatic. You've always liked talking. You've always been a natural leader. So I'd imagine that kind of helped form its way to getting you into the church. So yeah, hell yeah. Talk about how you became a pastor.
Yeah, man. So I'm serving on risk management, which means I'm strapped for Jesus. I carry a gun and make sure nobody takes a hit on the pastor. Like, that's my job, is to be the pastor's bodyguard.
Did you make a shirt, Strapped for Jesus? Because
no, but I should.
For all risk management people, like tell that to all risk management, Strapped for Jesus, and just
Strapped
have like,
Jesus, man.
Like the Jesus is my homeboy with like 2 guns, style.
So I'm on my shore tour down here as a flight instructor, and in 2019, something comes across my desk from NATO to get pulled for 6 months to go fill a gapped billet and go deploy short notice.
Wow.
And it happens. I didn't deploy with a unit. I didn't deploy with anybody I knew. I just went to plus up a gap billet for NATO. So I get over to the other side of the world, and I go to religious services because I'm on fire, and I'm not going to let a deployment stop that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a Bible study. And I asked the question, like, hey, this is cool, but are there any religious services? And someone told me that there was a gapped chaplain billet. It wasn't filled, so there was no one there to lead religious services. And one of my guys on NATO staff was like, well, sir, you're the senior ranking officer in the room. Why don't you step up? And I marinated on it, and I prayed on it. And I ended up preaching on that deployment for 6 months. Yep. Like it's like you said, man, public speaking has never been an issue. Being in front of a crowd has never been an issue. And God was able to use that gift in such a beautiful way, in such a not beautiful place. And then I came back, and that was December 2019, proposed to Mel. Surprised her, did the surprise deployment homecoming proposal. So cheesy.
Hey, listen, it works though, because the emotion is going. She can't say no. So it's
true. You are such a jerk if you say no right now.
Exactly. Like, and you probably had someone filming it too. You always have to have someone filming it.
My parents were filming it.
Exactly. You can't say no. So
yep.
So here's a good question. When you're out there and you're deployed and you start, talking about this, did you find that people, not only just Christians, would just listen to your services, just if they were faithful in general, just to hear a faithful message, right?
Yeah.
At that point, when you're deported,
deployed.
Yeah,
completely different.
But deployed. If you're just religious in general, it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Christian. Just hearing a faithful word and being together as a community is essentially what being faithful is about. Joining as a community, having a similar feeling together, right? There's a bonding thing. So did you find people from all walks and different religions just listening to you preach and just the community aspect that they were getting out of it?
It was the wildest move of God. Like the first time I went, I think it was 6 of us in a room, and by the end of the deployment, it was like 50 or 60 people getting together on Sundays. It was really strong. It really was. But I come back. It is basically early 2020, and we know what happens in March of 2020. Yeah. So for 3 months, I'm living the good life. I'm back to playing rugby. My knee feels great. While I was on that deployment, I did some NATO rugby clinics and stuff. It was super fun.
And can we stop there? You were also a professional rugby player. It's not like you played rugby for fun. Like, there's a difference between what you were doing and what a lot of other people, like plenty of people play rugby in the States, but you were a pro. And now the pro teams, it's not glamorous. It's like me. I'm a track guy. Track pros, you don't get a ton, but you were a professional individual. You were an eligible member to play on a Team USA team, right? Like,
I started with club, worked up to a D1 club, men's club, and then just had some crazy opportunities open up. The Navy asked me to go play for them, so I played professionally for the Navy for a while. I was one of 14 people that are Navy rugby players, and we used to travel and play. I played with the Combined Sea Services, which was the best of the Navy, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps, and we would get together and play. We used to go up to New York City on Fleet Week and play the FDNY and the NYPD team and smack the absolute piss out of them.
So why rugby? Why rugby out of all sports? Because you stayed away from sports in high school.
Yeah.
Why rugby out of all sports?
So I was a fighter my whole life, as you know.
Yes, you are.
Competitive fighter, really enjoyed it, really good at it. Did it through college. When I got to flight school, I put in a request form to go fight at a tournament. And my CO told me I was out of my mind. He said, we're dumping $10 million into your training. You already have 3 concussions on your record. You think I'm going to sign off on you going and fighting on the weekend? Are you a moron? So
that's a smart CEO, though. You would probably do the same thing now as a CEO. If another
100%.
young sprite cadet comes up to you and says the same thing, you'd be like, no, idiot, get back in line.
So I hung it up. And I didn't fight for 2 years while I went through flight school. I ended up in Norfolk. I'm thinking about getting back into the fight game. I'm 23 years old now. And the Olympics were on. And rugby was back in the Olympics for the first time since like the 1950s.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this sport and I'm like, bro, this looks stellar. You just hit people, like no pads, no. So looked up a local rugby team, figured I'd give it a go. And it was like a moth to the flame. Like I can't run 5 miles like you, but you give me a 10-yard sprint into someone's face.
Man, I can't run 5 miles anymore either. You got to
I'm
see
good.
me. You're like 200 in muscle. I'm 200 the other way now, and it ain't good. But
so I'm a little smaller back then. I'm like 6'3", 215 instead of like 245, 240 like I am now. And I'm quick and I take to it well. I play half a season at D3, and then the club's like, bro, you're coming up D1. Like, start running with the big dogs.
That's sick.
So I'm doing that. It's the first ACL blowout happened with that team. Moved down to Florida, coached here, played again. Navy picked me up, and then USA South, which is a regional elite team, USA feeder team.
Yep.
Went and played with them, and we're playing against Major League Rugby teams and just really getting after it. When I was playing with Navy, we do this tournament up in Glendale, Colorado, called it's the Armed Forces Championship, but it's part of Rugby Town Sevens. And I'll never forget, man, lining up on the pitch and looking up and seeing a dude with Olympic rings tattooed on his neck, and I'm like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
But like, you're at that level. Like, was that like an out-of-body experience? Like, no, I'm gonna beat the shit out of that guy. Like, he's awesome. I'm gonna put his face in the dirt. I'm gonna take the ball. I'm gonna go have a try, and that's the end of this. Like, it's fun. Like, I'm crushing him. Like,
yeah, it was a surreal experience looking up and being like, that's Jordan Conroy from the Irish national team. Cool, we're here. We did it. Anyway, so the pastor thing, right? So I come home and it's 2020. And 2020 kind of shuts everything down. And I had already decided that I was getting out of active duty in 2021 because of my kids and the divorce and 50-50 custody. And my family is more important than my career. And I didn't want to move and lose the custody I had. So wasn't doing that. And me and mama were not good yet. We still hated each other. So I start looking at employment opportunities. I get offers to do what I did in the military on the civilian side from a lot of mercenaries and contractors. Trident, Blackwater Academy, Evergreen, all these.
Would you have considered something like Operation Underground Railroad, where they go and have you ever heard of them? They go into situations where there's sex trafficking going on, and it's a bunch of former military guys, and they work with governments to extract kids. It's basically a special ops unit team that they go in there undercover. They extract the kids, bring them home. I've donated to them a million times. I think it's one of the best organizations of all time.
At that point in my life, I still very much would have enjoyed putting warheads on foreheads and just doing the Lord's work in the worst way. I still had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. But what all those jobs had in common was taking me away from home 6 months a year.
Yes.
And the whole reason I was getting out was to not lose time with my kids. My 4-year-old had been through 4 deployments, and I'm like, bro, you're missing it. Like, you're just missing it.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of waiting for the next big thing. And I have my personal training cert. And I was like, man, with security and personal training, I guess I could limp and make it work. And I don't know, I'll bridge the gap.
Just grind.
And the reserve flight billet I'm in now, it's jammed up with people, and a spot only opens if someone leaves. So there's, 20 reservists, and there's no spots available unless some guy checks out. So even there's a board every quarter, but there's no guarantee that there's a spot.
Yep.
So I submit the December board. There's only one spot in the whole wing, and they tell me you're too far away from getting out because my end date was April. Yeah. They're like, man, there's just people closer to the boat that need a job, so you're not getting one. Around that time, that November, December time frame, I got a notification on my phone that my church was hiring. I looked through it. It's a worship pastor. Like, bro, I don't sing. That's not it. Youth pastor, hell no. And then groups director, which is just like managing adults to manage adults to do small groups. And I was like, man, I could do that. So my pastor hits me up and we're talking, and I asked the bottom line, like, what's the pay? Yeah. And he tells me the pay, and I'm like, bro, we're not even in the same arena. Like, not even.
I got a family to feed. Like, what are you talking about here, basically, right? Like,
yeah, like there's 0% chance that that's even viable. So thank you, but no, thank you. Well, January every year, our church does a corporate fast. Everyone fasts for the first 3 weeks of the year. Set the first and the best. What are you praying for? What are you fasting for? Just start your year right. And my fast was for employment, and it was a liquid only fast. So for 21 days, I did nothing but liquid. And that'll put you in a place where you're definitely on your knees praying out to God.
Oh yeah, that's hard.
At the end of the fast, I came to a place where if the only thing holding me back was money, I was looking at ministry as a job and not a calling. And if it's a calling, the amount of money shouldn't matter. And I got to work on Excel and figured out if I train personal training this much and work this much security, and I could scrape by, but I had to ask him for a little more money. So I made a counter ask and he agreed to it, and off to the races we went. And I stepped out in obedience and took an uncomfortable position financially. And a month later, I got that reserve spot and was made completely whole, because I make just as much in the reserves as I do in ministry. And haven't been sweating it since. So
I mean, and that's faith in the Lord, right? That's the plan of the Lord. That
stepping out on faith.
And I think it was a part of the Lord guiding you to say, hey, if you take this position on faith,
100%.
that you're going to have to scrape by, I will take care of you here to make sure that you can do both. And that's kind of something where it's like, that sounds cheesy, right? But sometimes
it's scripture.
And it's scripture. And here's the thing. And one thing, I forget who said it, but it's like, if we're wrong, whatever. But what if we're right about faith? And what if we're right about God? Then we're eternal. Then we're living eternally in the end. Like, there's nothing wrong with believing.
No, but I've seen too many miracles and too many coincidences that aren't coincidences, and too many for me to believe that it's not. Like, I can't sit back and see the blessings and the miracles that have happened around me and been like, that's dumb chance. Things in my own life, people in others' other lives, and it was very much a Peter in the boat moment where Jesus was like, "No, dude, step on the water and walk to me." And I was like, "This water?" And he needed me to step out before he could be like, "All right, man, I got you." You know.
And why did you look down? Like, don't look down. Like, don't.
Keep your eyes on me.
There will be a moment where you look down and you will question, and then you'll have to regain. Like, that moment always happens, because that's the story of Peter. He walked out. When he looked down, he went in the water, and it's like, why didn't you believe in me? And that's you'll have that moment. We're weak. We always, all of us will look down at the water. It happens.
But the pinnacle of that story is that Jesus catches him below the water and lifts him back up.
Exactly.
And then has that moment of, "You have little faith," like, keep your eyes fixed on me, bro. And I've had a million of those moments. But anyway, man, I get hired as the groups director, which I am not. And 2 months later, Pastor Tim started getting some whispers from the Holy Spirit, like, "Man, I think this is your next youth pastor. He's got the vibe. He's a chill guy. He falls under authority. He's coachable," which are words that would not have described me in high school. But so he sends me on this youth event, because there hadn't been a youth pastor in 2 years. The youth pastor left in 2019, and then COVID hit. So there'd been no youth pastor for 2 years, and the youth program was decimated. And all we had was 17 kids, middle school, high school. And they put together with the volunteers a hockey night, and he just wanted me to go. And I didn't realize it was a job interview without being a job interview. So we go downtown, and I hooked the kids up with a pizza place. My buddy works there, and we're eating pizza before a hockey game. And there's a drunk idiot making a scene. And Tim's like, "Hey, go check that out." Long story short, I end up going full bouncer, hands on, yoking and choking this kid, dragging him out to the street in front of all of my high schoolers and my senior pastor. I'm pretty sure I'm getting fired. Like, it was a good run, 2 months in ministry. Not for me. I'm too rough around the edges. He calls me into his office that Monday. He says, "I want to talk about Friday." I said, "I figured." I'm bracing for shock. And he says, you did two things. You took ownership and protected your flock, and you showed teenage boys that being a Christian doesn't make you weak. And I want to offer you a job as youth pastor.
Righteous indignation. Sometimes where you need to be, like, and the thing is, and that's another thing that I think we've lost. And that's what,
the weak, khaki Christian. I hate that stereotype, man.
And, to be a Christian is always to turn the other cheek and never do it. And non-violence, peaceful only. No. And the thing is, especially if you know anything about the Old Testament and Old Testament God used to guide militaries and armies to fruitful victories. And there's plenty of stories there. And it's like, so there's a time and a place for everything.
Not even Old Testament, man. In the New Testament, Jesus kicked in the door of the temple and flipped tables and fashioned a whip and chased him out for dealing money in his church.
Exactly.
That's righteous anger. It said, the Bible says, "Be slow to anger, be angry and sin not." It doesn't say don't get angry.
Exactly.
And there's a difference. So there is a time and a place to go hands on. There's a time and a place to protect. And the commandment is, "Thou shalt not commit murder," not "Thou shalt not kill," which is something I struggled with being a military member. But if your heart posture is protection and covering others, then it's not murder. It's not the same. And there is a lot of minutia to that.
Do you think that's been perverted in a lot of scripture and in different religions? Because there is "thou shalt not kill" is kind of the well-known one. I feel like that's because of secularism that
Yeah.
it's changed, right?
Yeah, but you go back to the original Greek and the original Hebrew, and the word for kill and murder are not the same. And the commandment is, "Thou shalt not commit murder." And people will just take the translation that fits their narrative best and run with it, which is a real problem.
Which, because it contradicts a lot of the things that go on in the Bible. Saying "thou shalt not kill" does contradict a lot of the things that go on in the Bible, because obviously we kill for protection, we kill for food, we kill for a lot of reasons. We do kill things and other individuals, and it is part of being a human at times.
Well, King David is a man after God's own heart, and he rose to prominence for slaying Goliath with his own sword. So
exactly. So and I think that that's a good distinction that you made there. Thou shalt not murder versus thou shalt not kill. And that's why our laws are written the way they are. We're a Judeo-Christian country. The West is basically what used to be, but the West is basically Judeo-Christian as well. And that's why part of our laws, one of our main laws, is murder, not killing, because you find that self-defense killing is still okay in most states. In most states.
Well, there's standing ground laws, castle laws. I live in Florida, which is a huge castle and standing ground state.
So I'm in a you need to flee your own property before you try and defend yourself state here.
It's mind blowing.
It's
you'll like this, man. So in California, there was a court case that went through the California Supreme Court that judged in favor of the burglar because of the injuries he sustained.
Yeah. I think I saw something about this.
Yeah, in response to that, my county's sheriff said, "Make no mistakes about it. If someone breaks into your house, please shoot to kill, because it'll save us tax dollars." That was his official statement. Like, please shoot to kill. It'll save us tax dollars.
And that's the type of sheriff that would deputize every single person in his county just to make sure they don't have to listen to a law that they don't adhere to. Like, those are the type of sheriffs that I want. And then here's the thing, boys and girls, the importance of a good sheriff. If you're going to go for anybody, I don't care if you are.
You have choice over your sheriff.
If you are in the most leftist area that you can find in your state, but you have a ballsy sheriff that will sit there and go, "Yeah, I don't like that law. I think that law's stupid. Oh, you want to enforce that? I'm deputizing every single individual in this town so that like there's the importance.
Now the flip side of that, because I could sit here and I could be a schmuck as much as I want to,
of course.
But the flip side of that, and the hard part for me, was really understanding, like, love your neighbors, you love yourself, love your enemy. That's a real thing. And that's not just lip service. And you have to be able to see everybody as a figure bearer of God and as a child of God. And your heart should go out to them regardless. And that's really tough. One of the toughest lessons I learned was there was a school shooting and everyone was up in arms, as they should be. It's terrible. It's awful. And I was pretty PO'd about the situation, and my senior pastor was like, "But doesn't your heart break for him?" I was like, "Not really." He says, "Well, it should, because think about what he went through to drive him to a place where he thought walking into a school with a gun was a feasible option. And think about what he went through, where his brain is broken, his heart is broken, his home is broken. He didn't grow up like you, he didn't grow up like me, and your heart should break for him, because for him this was a viable option." And it switched my mindset so much.
And it's interesting you say that, because, I was listening to Joe Rogan today, and every once in a while I pick and choose depending on his guests. And he had Gad Saad on, who I like Gad Saad. And they were talking, Joe Rogan was talking about exactly like this, that he has a weird empathy for people, because he says he looks at people and regardless of what they do, he pictures them as a baby. And it's like at one point,
that's actually wild. That's what I do. I don't picture them as a baby, but I picture them as like a kid.
Yeah, at one point,
someone who doesn't know anything.
Yeah, at one point we were all innocent, and like your pastor said to you, like there's things that lead you to where you are. And I have to say, like, probably all three of us had similar upbringings where we were, middle class Manchester. Parents that loved us, a loving family, extended family. So it's like, even we can go wrong, right? We've had individuals that we grew up with that have had, similar upbringings, that they went different routes, right? And, I'm happy that a lot of my friends that I grew up with are, went through things, or in recovery now. And I love that for them. But it's like, you do have to think of those things sometimes. And you don't have to forgive necessarily what they did, but you can, empathize with things. And I think that's where society kind of gets it weird, because there's a difference between excusing behavior and empathizing with things that they went through while still having that person consequences for their actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, man. I want to continue with you, and I want to continue with, your youth group experience, and now continue getting us to pastorhood here.
Yeah, man. So I took over, like I said, it was pretty decimated. I had 10 middle schoolers, 7 high schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, I'm a person of action. And if you tell me I can't, I'm going to prove you wrong. And if I'm failing, I'm going to redefine what winning is, and I'm going to win a different way. And I love my senior pastor. All I wanted to do was hold his ladder and build the youth ministry that a leader of that caliber deserves. And I hit the ground running, man. I found a local cafe and a local frozen yogurt shop, and I put out word, and I was like, man, I'm going to be here every Wednesday, and I'm going to talk about some Bible, and if you want to show up, that's cool. And we started with 7 high schoolers, and we grew it to 25 high schoolers by the end of the summer. So in 3 months, we went from 7 to 25, meeting at froyo shops and cafes.
Nice.
And then I'm a portable church. We don't have a church building. We have a small office space with a warehouse, and we set up and tear down in schools every Sunday.
Wow.
We're in a high school and an elementary school, and we set up and tear down our church every Sunday.
Now, is this intentional, or is this because you just don't have the funds to get a brick and mortar?
So it's more so God put on Pastor Tim's heart when he launched the church that going in debt was never an option, because if you're a slave to money, you can't do missions. And his goal was to love the community and love people, and he never wanted to owe money to a bank that prohibited him from helping people. So over the first 10 years, the church raised enough money to buy 20 acres, and we bought 20 acres, and we are building. But
awesome.
for 12 years, we have been a portable church. We should open our first physical campus in about 2 years, but it took 14 years to get there.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, though.
But yeah, we set up and tear down every Sunday. So what I have is some offices and a warehouse. So I launch high school in the warehouse on Wednesday nights, and like 30 show up on the first Wednesday. And I'm like, dude, I'm crushing it. Like 30 kids. We started with 7.
That is awesome, right? That's
so,
great.
yeah.
That's 30 individuals that are listening to the word
Correct.
in a different way. Like, obviously, you're presenting the kids in a little bit of a different way, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to connect to them, but they are listening to the word. They're listening
That's
to,
right.
Something that's positive in a world of negative, and probably things they're hearing in school that are causing them to question a lot.
And that is August 25th of 2021 is when I launched my high school youth group officially with 30 kids.
Nice.
And now here we are 2.5 years later, and we run like 120 every Wednesday night.
That's good.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
It's incredible, man. That doesn't even include middle school.
It's also why we didn't go on tomorrow night, because you said,
because I got youth group.
We
I got to preach.
We usually stream on Wednesdays, and you're just like, I got youth group. And I had no problem being like, that comes first. All right, what do you want? Tuesdays, good, boom. And we got Tuesdays going because I wanted to have you on, because so far this has been one of my favorite just shows, hearing about your path. Because, being a friend of yours from many moons ago, and obviously disconnecting for, adulthood does that. Everyone, it's hard to stay in touch, but hearing the journey and the path you've gone on is awesome. I feel like, we're right back at it in 6th grade, reading the Hobbit and joking around and everything.
Yeah, I actually talked to Mr. Coyle probably about 6 months ago.
Nice.
I got his email address from his mom. His mom follows me on Facebook and is always commenting sweet old Italian lady things on my posts.
Love it. Mama Coyle.
Yeah, but I emailed Mr. Coyle, Coach Coyle, about 6 months ago, man, and we had a great conversation. And his big takeaway, he said, I have a lot of students. Some of them don't ever get it, and some of them get it, and you got it. And coming from him,
you got to share that with me. I got to get in touch with Mr. Coyle too.
I'll send you his email.
He touched so many individuals in a lot of ways, and I just remember one of my best memories is being on the track 6th grade and running, and just it's still burned in my head, and it was burned in my head all throughout my life. 200 meters, just hearing Coach Coyle across the track going, "Start your kick, Cuesta!" And that's just what I did. It's like that's burned into my brain. And if you're watch this for any reason, Coach Coyle, still to this day, there's times where I have that in my nightmares. So
he started the fire in my belly about the military. 9/11 cemented it.
Yep.
Lord of the Rings is still my favorite book.
Easily.
David
knows the whole entire Tolkien is my favorite.
And he was my wrestling coach. He was my first wrestling coach, and as someone that did combat sports my whole life, like he had a very foundational piece of my discipline and my training, because we were the little kids, you and me, we were the scrappy kids.
And I'm pretty sure you beat me for A-team 6th grade.
I did.
You beat me for A-team?
I did.
You dickhead.
Sorry, man. I beat you and I took your girlfriend. I am the enemy in your story.
You know what, though? We're all married with kids. We all ended up. You're beating me there, too. You got 6 to my 2. So, damn it. I can't stop losing. Get off my
I have 6 kids, but I only worked for 3 of them. And that's the crazy part. Like, I have my 2 daughters from my first marriage.
Yeah.
And me and my wife had one together. she brought my stepson into my life.
Mhm.
And then we have 2 little girls that were abandoned by their mother 2 years ago, and we took them in. And they've been with us for about 2 years, and it's probably going to be forever. So
God bless both of you, though. You know what? That's so much to take on, right? Especially in the economy and everything we're going on today. Like, so many people would sit there and go, "I want to, but," right?
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah.
I feel like with you and the way you are and your calling and everything, like,
yeah. Well, it's God has a cool way of saying, "Prove it."
yes.
So as a pastor, I'd often said this exact sentence: if the American church did what it was supposed to, foster care shouldn't exist. And then God rolled a grenade on my doorstep and was like, "Prove it."
Yeah, go ahead.
Prove it.
Do it,
Go
man.
ahead, bro. Yeah.
and
It's my
hey,
fault.
listen, and there you go. But you're not wrong in that sense. And
Oh, not at all.
That's exactly. And then that's just the American church, churches in general at this point.
Yes.
I feel like, I mean, obviously the Catholic leader is, I think he's a freaking heathen, and just an awful pope. And being a former Catholic, I feel like it's tough right now in the situation that they are because they have no leadership.
Yeah.
And, poor form on the archbishops that brought this man to where he is. But I've moved away from Catholicism myself just because I was a history major, and being a history major, I don't feel like you can know the history of the Catholic Church and still remain faithful to the Catholic Church. I will always say this: I am grateful for the foundation that the church gave me, because the morals, things like that, the basis, that's where I go myself. That's why I'm a Christian.
Sure.
Outside of that, and Father Bernie over in Lakehurst was a fantastic man. I loved Father Bernie. He preached the word well. He was a good man. From everything I knew about him, I've never heard any controversy with Father Bernie. So he was a very good man.
Yeah.
Couldn't stay Catholic. Just with everything you like, I'm just basically a Christian at this point.
There were too many questions without answer in scripture where you'd have to go to church tradition or something somebody said, and I'm like, man, I don't love that.
No.
And then history-wise, man, that was a big thing for me too. The whole idea that the nation that persecuted and crucified Jesus decides to put their banner on the original church and call it the Roman Catholic Church. I was like, that seems weaponized. I don't love that at all. And sure enough, it was weaponized throughout history. So
it's history of being a political arm, basically, throughout its entire existence. And still, the Pope tries to put himself in politics. And even the good popes have still had much good sway, like in terms of their word. And that shouldn't be the role of a,
well, it's
different.
This is the sad part for me, man, is you, like me, grew up saying either the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed every single Sunday before we got the sacrament. Like, that's what you do.
Remember it.
I've said it a million times.
Yeah.
After I started my new walk with Jesus, and I was home, and my wife was Baptist and then non-denominational, I was just telling her some Catholic isms, and I was orating and "Our Father who art," like doing the whole thing. And I started saying the Nicene Creed, and I paused in the middle of it, and I looked at her, and I said, "I've said that 1,000 times, and this is the first time I realized that that's the gospel." Because all I was doing was puking words that I had memorized without knowing what they meant.
Yep.
And it is literally the story of the gospel, how the world was made, how we fell, why God sent Jesus. And I never digested that until I was a 30-year-old man far away from Catholicism, because all it was word vomit. And that's a travesty.
And I think that's tough because, we go through CCD, and I take nothing away from the CCD teachers. They do their best, but they're dealing with children and trying to teach them the word to prepare them to be good members of the community and good members of the church. But it's like you're learning the Lord's Prayer, you're learning the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the all those different prayers that we need to learn.
Yep.
But you're not going to understand the meaning at that age and the way it's structured, right? It was not at all. You went from school to school, and it's like. And I hope that you're doing it differently. And obviously you are. You have a bunch of individual kids, high school kids still listening to you weekly. So obviously you're bringing the word in a different way. And I feel like Catholicism doesn't want to change in that sense.
It misses the relationship side of it in a big way. Yeah. And man, the big blessing with the high schoolers is right now it's the end of the year. Yeah. So driving age down here is 16. So every sophomore, junior, and senior has their driver's license, and they show up.
New York,
and they show up. They are driving. Mom and dad aren't dropping them off. Mom and dad aren't forcing them. Yeah. Everybody but the freshmen drive themselves. Bring themselves to a sweaty warehouse to hang out with each other, eat pizza, and listen to this dope talk about Jesus. And they come every week.
And my favorite part about this is outside of even the faith that you're bringing them, you're creating leaders. You're creating individuals that are not good. Even if they walk away from faith at some point, they have a good foundation and they're going to be leaders that are not going to be afraid to say no to things that are wrong. For the most part, everyone can go astray, right? But you're giving them the ability and at least the foundation to not be a part of the sheep crowd that we see on freaking Columbia, Yale, NYU,
man,
all the things, and they'll look at something, and even if they believe in it, I'm not going to do it with them, though. I'm not going to do it that way.
And I appreciate your kind words, but it's not me. I mean, I got chosen, I guess, but number one, between middle school, high school, and college, I've got 40 volunteers under me that would follow my word into the pits of hell. I really believe that they're the best. And there is no leadership like volunteer leadership because they don't have to. They choose to.
Yes.
And then me, dude, I'm just a tool and God chose to use me, but it's not me, it's Christ through me. Everything my kids learn is because God gave me something to say because the Holy Spirit pushed me a certain way. If it gets to a point where I feel like I'm doing it, I'm wrong. And I need to check my pride and check my spirit. So I know what you're saying and I appreciate it. And in a sense, like God gave me the shovel and God did it, but he told me to dig it and I'm willing to put the shovel in the dirt. But I would be nothing without that because it's not me. There's got to be less of me and more of him for any of this to work. That's the only way this works.
A good leader is a humble leader. And that's one thing that you will find. A good leader is a humble leader. And that is why the best leaders always give credit to faith, whatever their faith is. They give credit to that faith because of the humility that you learn. David, you've been silent. Do you have anything to add to this?
Well, I'm just enjoying
it. Yeah. And you're enjoying me and Steve kind of like
this is a get together. This is being back with each other. So I'm just enjoying. I'm shutting up.
But do you have anything that you want to throw in that you want to add to?
Not right now. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like we can forego, honestly, the whatever thing we want to tack on.
Yeah, no, we can forego. We can go for a little bit longer with this because I feel like, I want to jump back because I do want to talk about rock bottom. I want to talk about your struggles and the things that you went through because I feel like anytime someone's gone through something and is willing and able to talk about it, it can potentially help and save somebody else that is in that position because, I'm fortunate that I've never been in a terrible position. I suffered in a minor way where, I found myself not in a position I liked being, drinking too much and not finding my way. And, without my wife basically telling me, pick yourself the fuck up or I'm never going to see you again. That again, she helped bring me out, but I was never in a place where I ever, was straying that far.
Yeah.
Everyone has their moments. I want to hear what yours was like. What was that? What was rock bottom like for you? How did it feel?
Yeah, man.
And what really helped you pull yourself out of it?
Yeah. So I brought myself to rock bottom pretty hard. I mean, other people made choices and decisions and actions that hurt me, but it was really my inability to deal with any of my emotions. I got to this place where I felt like a man who showed emotions was weak. So you just gutted it. And I also didn't want to feel like a burden to anybody else because that made me feel weak too. So the only emotion I felt or showed was either numb or angry. Because those are man emotions, right? Either I'm numb or I'm angry.
Sure.
And that ostracized me from my ex-wife when she was still my wife. That ostracized me from my parents. We didn't have a great relationship for that period of time. And then, my ex doing what she did and my injury and isolated and alone. And dude, I just spiraled. Alone with your thoughts when your brain is unhealthy is a dangerous place to be. And it was full of self-pity and it was full of woe is me. And I didn't have the foundation or the relationship with God to have anywhere to turn to with it. And I didn't hit rock bottom. I smacked it so hard I bounced and God was cool enough to catch me on the way back up. Like that's honestly how I feel about it. And what got me out of it was the three people that saved my life. It was Jesus, Mel, and Doug, my now wife. When we started talking, I should say, we got like a bite to eat after the gym a time or two. But when I got the balls to ask her like, hey, tomorrow's Sunday, I'd love to take you out and do something. She said, well, I'm going to church. I'd love for you to join me. And that was my first time going back to church was with her on a date. And where my buddy Doug had been asking me for 4 months. And I said, no, the pretty girl in the booty shorts at the gym asked me once. And I'm like, yeah, let's go to church. I love church.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, it's great.
Also, though, the girl that asks you to go to church is absolutely one you consider for wife and motherhood, because
bro,
that's hard. That is an ideal, at least a good foundation of okay.
Yep. Well, let me tell you when she rocked my whole world, man. So 27 years of heathen Steve, married or not, like I said, I met my wife because she had my ex-wife because she had big boobs, tattoos, and I was like, that's it. I love her. So I have a checkered past, is a really nice way to say it.
Yeah.
And on my first sit down serious date with my now wife, she's like, hey, just want to be real with you. I've only ever been with one person my whole life, and it was my first husband, and I only plan on being with one other person, and it's my next husband. And this was before I went to church, before I found Jesus, and she put me in a position where I had to choose, is this worth it? If what I'm chasing for is tail, and she's telling me it's not going to happen, am I wasting my time?
Yep.
Or do I need to change my perspective and realize there's a lot more in life than bringing home a girl? So she set the tone freaking quick about what this was going to be. Hey, I'm waiting until marriage. And oh, by the way, our first date can be church.
And here's the thing. If you're a young man,
yeah,
truly being a man is deciding when to stop being a boy. That's is right. When you truly become a man, is when you decide that I want to settle down. I want to protect something. I want to work for something. That is being a man. Being a man is not banging everything you see.
It's when you stop working for yourself. It's when you stop being selfish.
And when you stop being selfish. And
that's right.
And that is when you become a man. If people are curious when you become a man, it's when you don't want to live for yourself anymore. That is when you truly become a man. In my eyes, at least.
Well, this is the part where I'm going to piss off half your listeners. So, Good. Hey guys, hope you're listening. One of the greatest moments, and these are my wife's words, the greatest moments in our relationship is when I took the baton as the spiritual leader in our relationship. Because then she got to live out a life of submission under me. Because what does the Bible say? Women, submit to your husband as you do the Lord, which is a very weaponized sentence. And people forget that the next line of scripture is, men, love your wife like Jesus loved the church.
Yes.
Which means I'm willing to go to the cross for my wife. I'm willing to be crucified. I'm willing to stand in public square, be whipped, be beaten, and be put on a cross for my wife's sake. And because of that leadership, she willingly submits to my authority. It's not slavery, it's submission, and submission's a choice. So I need to be a leader worth following.
And that also doesn't mean that she just sits quietly pretty and says nothing.
Hell no.
You work together as a team. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't make any decisions and everything you say is gold.
No.
It means that she is willing to follow you in the tough things, on the things that are your foundational core beliefs. She is there with you and not questioning and not wavering, that you guys are together on the important issues. All the minor mundane things, of course, you work together. And of course, she makes decisions. People forget also that there's a reason why it's a union. There's a reason why you are now one. You stop being yourself. There is more Steve Mendez when you get married. There is you and your wife. You are one individual when you decide to get married. And that's also people lose as well.
Yeah. It's hate it for you if you don't believe this, but men and women are created differently for a reason. Absolutely. There's things that she does that I can't, and things that I do that she can't. And when it comes to maternal instinct and love and nurturing, she gets aces, I get D pluses. When it comes to providing and protecting, I get aces, and it's not her place because she doesn't have to. And that's okay.
Yeah. And
it's okay. It's almost like it's God's design, maybe.
And we're different, and why do men naturally want to protect women? Because women are as close to God as you get, because they create life. They are part of the reason they give life. We help create it together. But they bring life into the world, which is why they are the most precious commodity, which is why we don't want them generally on the front lines in the military, which is why we generally don't want them to be police officers. It's not because they're not capable. It's because we want to protect them because they are more precious than men.
And it's not in their design. It's not in their design, man. And
we are. They're not willing to look at another man and take their thumbs and put it into their eyes and squash them to death because 100%. They're going to do it to you if you don't do it to them. That is not. Some of them do. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are programmed that way, but majority are not. Majority of men are programmed to do that.
There's this scripture in Ephesians where it says, wives, respect your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. And it's such a short phrase, but it's so telling. Nowhere in the Bible is a woman commanded to love her husband.
Mhm.
God doesn't have to tell a woman to love her husband because they're inherently love. That is what they are. They're fashioned after love. Men are run on respect.
Mhm.
So women are commanded to respect their husbands. We are respect beings.
Mhm.
And as a married person, if anyone's married and you're listening to this, if you're ever fighting and it stops being about the fight and it continues anyway, it's because you feel disrespected by her. So you withhold love, and then she feels unloved. So she disrespects you. And you need to break the love respect cycle to stop the fight, because you ain't even fighting about who didn't wash the dishes.
Yeah.
It's because you feel disrespected and she feels unloved. And that's how we're wired. And y'all need to figure out how to break that cycle. And once I figured that out, my marriage got great.
And and that's the thing. And it's, and everyone has their own way, right? Marriages work all different. Every marriage is different. But, what you said is completely correct. And that is, something that everyone could take to the bank. And I don't care what faith you have. That's kind of true for basically all relationships. So last thing I want to touch on, and probably one of the most important things in, my life and your life, fatherhood. What's it like being a dad of 6? Because I'm a dad of 2, and that's hard. What's it like, man? And what's it been like?
Being a dad of 6.
Yeah.
Being a dad is the greatest thing I've ever done, short of being a Jesus follower and a husband.
Yep.
It's the greatest thing I've ever done, man. Being a dad of 6 is chaos, but I'll tell you what, anything over 3 is chaos because you're playing zone coverage. Like the second you get out of man coverage and you move to zone, you're screwed. You're outnumbered, man. Having 6, it's like the chaos contains better because there's 5 of them that are very similar ages. I have my 9-month-old son, but then I have a 7, 8, 8, 10, 10.
Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, the way the Fosters and the step like all folded together, they're all right there. So they just go spiral and go crazy. And it's when it gets quiet that I have worries. But as long as I hear noise, I'm like, they're good. They're fine.
You almost have a Brady Bunch going on there, man, because it's like a smorgasbord. You have a little bit of a Brady Bunch situation.
Oh yeah, it is the ultimate blended family. But I love it, man. I love it. I love being the minivan gang. I love feeling like a clown car every time we unload somewhere. It's the greatest thing in the world, man. I love sitting on the couch and I got 5 people fighting over who wants to cuddle. It's the best, man.
So what has it taught you about yourself? Because I know for me, fatherhood taught me that I'm not as patient as I thought I was at all. I'm not as patient as I thought I was, and not as patient as I want to be. I have more emotions than I thought I did. The range is a lot more. And I have 2 girls. So it's like, you could be rough and tumble, because girls also could be rough and tumble. But there's always a limit there. I don't know about boys, and I play, my friends, like sons and stuff like that, I beat them up, and it's like there is a limit, but it's like you learn a lot about yourself being a dad. What have you learned about yourself?
Yeah, well, I was a girl dad first too. I had 2 girls with my first wife, and the amount of sharp edges that rounded is insane. I think God knew I couldn't have a boy first, because if I had a boy first, he would have turned into exactly who I was, and I was not a good person. And he sent me 2 beautiful girls to humble me and fix me and reprioritize me. And then I have my stepson, who's super cool. But having Trip, my 9-month-old, is like, that's my boy. And now I'm looking at this little guy and I'm like, bro, I'm finally the man that I need to be to teach you to be the man that you need to be. And it is such a cool moment where I'm not just like, oh, I'm going to teach you to chase tail and drink beer. I'm like, no, I'm going to teach you how to be a man. And that's my little buddy, man. Even at 9 months old, he's all boy. He's just dirt and noise. And it's the greatest, man. But one of the hard lessons, and this is very specific to my situation, is I realized how much more grace I gave my 2 bonus kids than I gave my own kids. When the Fosters came into my life, I didn't want to offend them. I didn't want to hurt them. I knew what they'd been through, and I kind of like handled them with kid gloves for the first 6 months. And I realized how unfair it was to my own kids that I had so much patience and grace with these strangers living in my house, and my own kids got the short end of the stick. And it made me reevaluate my patience and how I handled certain situations. And if I can have that grace with these kids, why shouldn't I have it with my own kids? And that was a tough pill to swallow for me, just to call yourself out as not getting a 10 as dad. And be like, man, here's your blind spots. Let's fix it. That was tough.
And, and like, I find myself too, like, parenthood quite literally is just making mistakes.
Oh yeah.
It's quite
100%.
literally making mistakes, trying, failing, but no one, and and some parents take advantage of this, and that's why they're not great parents, but no one's more forgiving than your children
100%.
because they love you. And
Yeah.
and they'll follow you till the ends of the earth because you're all they know.
Yep.
And there's something that is just when you know that you've messed up and you've done wrong by them,
It's
you
the
are
worst.
just hurting, and it's like
The worst.
you have to go and apologize. You
Oh,
have
yeah.
to go in there and just be like, and and obviously, if there was a reason for why you lost your cool, your temper,
Yeah.
there was a reason why you were trying to convey a consequence or something, but
Yep.
it's something natural and innate that it just burns, and it's like I handled that terribly.
I missed it.
I missed it. I missed the mark there, and
Yeah.
it's like, and you go in, and it's like, I'm sorry for what I did, and it's so. I don't think you ever say you're sorry more genuinely than you do to your child after you mess up.
I would
And
agree with that, man.
And it's just something you learn as a parent too. And it's like, but then the teachable moment becomes better because if you're sincere with them and you're humbled in front of them,
Yep.
the next words and that lesson that you were trying to teach them starts to come through most of the time easier. Sometimes they're still pissed at you and like, get out of my room. And it's like, no, I own this house. And then it starts again. But it does solidify.
I don't have kids, but I did just want to bring into this, and you guys might agree with me. I hope you do. But it's not just the lessons that you directly try to teach them. It's how you live your life every day because your kids are watching you every single moment, and they learn everything from whatever you do. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what they're watching you do. They're going to be you.
It matters what you say, too, because Mendez knows I have the mouth of a sailor, and I still do. And my daughters sometimes do. And it's like, my wife looks at me and like, you know me, Mendez. I'm an idiot. I can't help but laugh and just be like, don't say that. But it's like, I have the mouth of a sailor. And that's something and I'm terrible around my kids. But it's like, but I do teach them like, hey, there's a time and a place for everything, right?
Sure.
Like, don't say that word. If you're going to, only in the house, but don't say it at school. Like one of those things. And it's like, but I know that's one of my shortcomings. It always has been from when you met me. I had a mouth of a sailor in 6th grade, but that wasn't just me trying to be cool. That's quite literally who I am.
Yeah.
It's just my speech pattern and it's not great, but
and
then
find that. The other big lesson, man, is you can't be their best friend and their parent at the same time.
No.
I'm not here to be my kid's best friend.
Nope.
I'm here to be their parent. I have two jobs on this earth. Teach them to follow Christ and teach them to not be shitty people. I'm not here to teach them math or science or sports. I can fill in the gaps on some of that stuff. I can help with those things. I have chase after God. Don't be a shitty person. I can't be their best friend. I can't worry about if they like me that day. I can't worry about if they're mad at the decision that I made for them.
Yep.
And taking their anger and being okay with it because you did the right thing, that's a tough lesson.
It is. And it's like, and you're friends in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
Like you are their friend because you are their first friend. You're their first confidant before they go and have friends. But there is that line that you have to draw of, I'm also the disciplinarian.
I'm the parent.
And my decision is final.
Yeah.
And you will respect me. And
that's right.
You will, and they're gonna, and they push that, and they push it, and they push it, and they push it, and they, and that's just being a kid. And then you also need to remember at times, like they're a kid.
They're a kid. Give them grace.
Give them grace. Like they're not always going to follow you perfectly. They're not. Oh, they're going to push back. They're going to do things wrong. They're not going to apologize because you know what? As adults, we do the same thing.
And their brains aren't even developed, bro. Like they don't even have the capacity to understand what we understand.
My brain's still not developed.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And I feel like it gives a lot of long-term thinking. Like this is short-term thinking when you're parenting. That's why, like when you said, like I can't care about when they're mad at me that day because eventually they'll get it.
Oh yeah.
Now, eventually they'll get it. It might take a long time. I might be in the grave, but eventually they'll actually get it. Hopefully.
Yep. It's the amount of times I've apologized to my mother for the things I swore she was wrong about. That as a parent now, I'm like, you're so right. You were right.
It's right around 25 years old when you first move out. And you sit there and you have to do all your bills on your own and everything. And then you're like, they were right about everything.
They were right.
Or they were right about most things. Like some things are individual, but man, they were right about so much.
When I walk around the house and I'm like, turn the lights off. Close the door. Stop taking such a long shower. I'm like, my parents. What is wrong with me?
100%. And but then I find myself looking at my younger daughter, Madeline, sometimes and going, what is wrong with you? And it's like, oh no, you're me.
Yeah.
She is me in female form. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I know how to deal with you. I was an idiot too. You do dumb things. But she's but again, it is what it is. It's fun. And the biggest thing is effort, right? As long as you're trying and you're doing your best, you're a successful parent. Different, but just try.
With young kids, and it's so true, man. Love is spelled Time. Show up, be there, be present. Mm-hmm. They're not going to remember what you said when they were 4, but they'll remember that you showed up. They'll remember that you were there, that you went to the stupid play they put on in kindergarten, that you were at their preschool graduation. You don't need to have this deep speech for your 6-year-old. Yeah. Just show up, be there, be present, man. That's it.
That is a bumper sticker, man. For young kids, love is spelled Time. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that one. That's a great quote. Yeah. That is a good quote. But another thing is, I believe that you're doing awesome by your kids. You're leading by example.
Thank you.
You're a spiritual man. You're a pastor. They are seeing somebody that is not only preaching to be a servant, but is being a servant, and that's fantastic. And Mendez, it was awesome catching up, man. Yeah. I love having you.
It was great. I love being here. It's super fun. Appreciate you guys having me on, man. Getting to tell my story a little bit.
Anytime. Yeah. Once we talking, I saw that you're a pastor, and I've seen it for a little bit, and you're doing the current podcast. And talk about that real quick. What is the current podcast? Why should people subscribe? Where can they find it?
Yeah. It is a dumb side quest me and my work husband started. So me and my best friend at work, he's the worship director, the creative director at the church. Mm-hmm. We started doing these little 5-minute intro reels to tell people what was going on in the church, just like a bulletin in video form. Mm-hmm. We were like, bro, we could do this for an hour. So we just started talking about current events and our senior pastor's current message and breaking it down into bite-sized pieces for people that had a little trouble digesting it day of. And we just ran with it. We plan nothing, we script nothing. We show up, we hit record, and we're like, let's freaking rip it. And it's just like sitting in the basement with my boy. But instead of beers, we have water and coffee, and we're just talking about the week and current events and being idiots. So that's it. We're 12 episodes deep, and we love it.
You can find it on Spotify, and also there's YouTube as well, right? Is it on the ministry's YouTube?
It's on the Momentum Church YouTube, and then the current podcast is its own Spotify, its own, and you can get it, at all the different podcast places.
Everyone go subscribe there, and quickly touch on what Fit Dungeon was, because you stole me a shirt, by the way. Many moons ago, you said you were going to send me a shirt. I never got it. So you stole me a Fit Dungeon shirt.
I got a few XLs. I could send you one. It's well worn.
I'm large, but no, you actually, if you make a current podcast shirt, I want one of those so I can rep it on the show.
Got you. So Fit Dungeon was something me and my buddy Greg started, and it got off the ground and it was doing super well. And then I got served with divorce papers, and I was like, this is one last thing I don't want to divide in a divorce. So I just shut it down and ended it overnight, because it was one more thing I didn't want to deal with.
And you had another podcast for a little while, didn't you? You did another podcast.
It was with the same guy. It was the guy that I did Fit Dungeon with, Ryan Ocean. He was a professional wrestler. His real name's Greg, but Ryan Ocean was his wrestling name. And he just wanted me on as this little side quest guy called Steve the Pilot, who gave insight into things. And that was it. We did that for a little while. He was in the Air Force, and he got a short tour to Korea for a year. So that kind of nipped that in the bud, but we had fun doing it. Again, we would just sit around, talk about what was going on in the wrestling world, which I knew nothing about, which is why I was just like the little John of the podcast. I just gave my little quips. But it was fun, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve, again, it was awesome catching up with you, Mendez. It was great. So once again, he's Steve Mendez. He's a, awesome dude, pastor pilot, pro rugby player, father of 6, host of the current podcast. Go look for it on the Momentum Church YouTube, and go listen to it on Spotify. Anywhere you can find a podcast. As you could tell, he's a man with a lot of stories, a lot of experiences. We're only 35, and you've been through, a ton in your life, and you have a lot of wisdom. You're doing great things, quite literally doing God's work. So anyone that is, doing what you do deserves a tremendous amount of respect. And you appreciate you taking some time to jump on here.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys having me, making the time for me. It's good to catch up, man. I feel like I'm in 6th grade a little bit.
A little bit. You're still rat boy, man. You still are.
I am rat boy. Dude, I might get my kids some pet rats. That might be in the future. So
gotta do it. Well, you gotta get the rat tail. You gotta give your son a rat tail.
Yeah. I get my mullet and a mohawk, so we're working up to it. We're working on it, man.
Gotta work on it. So again, once again, the Alex Cuesta Show. If you're watching on YouTube, X, thank you for both. We appreciate it. Repost, like, share, subscribe, smash that like button, everything. 5-star rating, do all that good stuff. We're on our quest for 4K on X followers, quest for 100 subscribers on YouTube. So go on there, spread the word. And we'll be back next week. We'll have some fun again. We appreciate everyone for watching. So long, everyone.